Good afternoon. My name is David Liddell from SKYE Business Solutions. Welcome to the Leadership Success Navigator Series. This is webinar 3 of 4, and the next seminar will be next month. As I mentioned, my name is David Liddell. For those of you who don't know us, the company, we are a leadership development company. We've been in business for about 14 years, and everything we do revolves around leadership and helping companies improve their capabilities through their employees, through the development of their employees and their leaders. For those of you on the line, you're either a leader, an aspiring leader, or someone who's interested in leadership to a certain degree. But this program came out of a number of conversations with existing clients looking for something that was rapid, kind of a quick starter. And of course, everybody wants something to happen very quickly. Everyone wants the magic pill to make things better. This may not be the magic pill, but I think it is probably the next best thing, and it's what I consider to be the fundamental formula for leadership success. So this is how it works. This webinar is 60 minutes. We try to keep it right on time so people can get back to work. I know how busy everybody is. As I mentioned, this is the third of 4. You should have the worksheet. I hope everyone has downloaded the worksheet. The worksheet looks very much like that, what I have on the screen, and this will walk you through the programs. I'll give you an opportunity to answer questions for yourself. I'll prompt you at certain points during this webinar to jot down a few things so that you actually take something from this session. I want you to be able to walk away with something tangible, real, that you can use to enhance your leadership capabilities. So we'll run this for 45, 50 minutes, and then we'll open it up for questions at the end. We usually have a handful of questions, so please stay on the line for that. And of course, if you have questions yourself and you want to jot them down, there's a message window, a chat window. Please jot them down, and I'll make sure the moderator will come at the end to provide me with some of the detail. So with that, I'm going to move forward. And we're going to talk a little bit about just how the program is structured. We had the first one in the series was September, around a framework for leadership success, which is all about how you need to think as a leader. I call it about getting your head straight as a leader. The second one in October was all about understanding your value and what you want to achieve. This provides direction and guidance. And then today is about, well, how are you going to get there, the navigation. How do you plan your pathway to achieving the success and delivering on the value you want. And of course, once you have that in place, you have to know how to make it happen. And you can't do that on your own. That's about planning, communicating, and executing, and you need others involved. And that's going to be our webinar for next month. The benefits to you, pretty simple. We want to make this as real as possible. So that's why we have the worksheet, and we ask questions, or I ask questions specifically. And it's about helping you grow professionally, reaching your full potential as a leader. And if that works, then there's a natural benefit to business success. But that is the process. We're thinking about you as an individual, adding value to you as an individual leader, and then, of course, that translates into leadership success and success for the organization. So here are the topics we're going to discuss today. We want to ensure that, and of course, this plays off the last 2 webinars that we've already run. But this is a standalone webinar, so if you haven't attended the first 2, don't feel bad. One, we have them recorded on the website, so you can go back and listen to them. But this does play on and is a carry-on from others, but you can certainly do this on your own, answer many of the questions related to your day-to-day responsibilities and activities today. So, the first thing is making sure that your business objectives are strategically aligned to the value that your organization provides, and that's not always the case. Sometimes decisions are made in a vacuum. Let's make sure that what you're thinking about, how you're going to go at achieving your results, is strategically aligned to what's most important. Secondly, you've got to look at the exterior landscape as well as the interior. But the idea here is, look, what does our landscape look like? What does our marketplace provide us? What are the things that we need to consider internally that might be holding us back? Thirdly, we're going to look at your business process. How do you look at process? Business process is great provided it works. Many organizations struggle with process. It's not clean, it's not crisp. Employees struggle, which causes stress, which causes disengagement. So we want to have a look. I'm going to give you a framework to consider what's working well in your organization and what's not. And then, of course, as I mentioned earlier, you can't do this without your employees. So I'm going to give you a model to look at that gives you a visual understanding of where are your employees and how are they performing relative to what is important to you and the business. And then the last two things we'll do is I'm going to give you an opportunity to think about, well, what are two gaps within my organization and how might I go at solving them? So let's talk about business objectives. I always like to start with a definition. Goals, strategy, objectives. Many people confuse the terms. Let's start with a few definitions here that will help. A goal in itself, and I will provide examples to each one of these to give you further context, but a goal is, just said, it provides an understanding of outcomes. What is the outcome that you want to do that is connected to your value? Value has a lot to do with what business am I in? And you might say, well, we provide this product. No, the product provides the value. So if somebody were selling a car, the value might be luxury. That is the value received by the customer. The car, the product itself, is just the vehicle to deliver that value. A strategy is written here as an approach, something you're going to attempt to implement to help you achieve your goal. And achieving goals might require multiple strategies. Your objective is something that is measurable. It is a step or is a measurable step as part of the strategy that tells you, are we achieving? You have to be able to look at incremental steps along the way. You don't want to have a long-term strategy and realize at the end it didn't work. You want to have steps along the way that you can measure to assess your effectiveness. And of course, tactics are the tools. These are the things you use or the activities you use to go after objectives and directly associated with the strategy. So if we think about strategic business objectives, it's anything, or it's something specific, I should say, that will take your organization to the next level. Whether your organization is doing well and you want to take it to the next level in terms of competitiveness, perhaps it's growth, perhaps it's profitability. But ideally, what you want to consider in all of this is, what is it we need to do to move the bar? Let's look at an example. If we state the goal is to become the most efficient business unit in the company within 12 months, imagine you are a general manager within an organization that has multiple business units, and your goal is to become the most efficient business unit in the company. A strategy, one of your strategies might be connecting your employees. Do my employees, are they motivated, and do they understand how to apply their effort in the most effective way? So the strategy is aligning employees' values, motivators, and effort to key business outcomes. If you connect employees to outcomes, you're going to have a much better chance of achieving. The objective is to attain 95% on-time shipment. If we do what we need to do with our employees as it relates to the strategy, that will have a direct impact on on-time shipment because it will align them with the value stream or the business process. And of course, the tactic is assigning performance targets to each employee, making sure everyone understands what it means to be successful. And the last part, measured regularly, means management is looking at targets. But I like to think of them as leaders coaching their employees for greater performance. So if we think about how that relates to the business overall, you've got to think about your business perspective. Most organizations consider this or consider one or more of these, but you really need to consider all four, and business objectives will fall into one of these four categories. One of them is your customer. Is your customer satisfied? It's from their perspective. Your business process, how efficient is your organization running? The learning and growth category is everything to do with culture and how your employees feel about working in your organization. And of course, financial. Most organizations always look at financials because you've got to have the cash. You've got to have the cash flow of the money to make things flow and work. So if we use my previous example, and as I mentioned here, each strategic objective needs to fall into one of these four categories. Aligning employee values and motivators to key business outcomes is the objective that falls under learning and growth. Learning and growth comes through leadership. It comes through the management in the organization guiding, and understanding what motivates employees so that they are fully engaged in delivering on the organization's value. But there certainly could be another one. Let's add another one here. Under business process, it could be something as simple as improving order processing to reduce errors over a certain period of time. You want to have the very tangible measurement piece, but you've got to think about the strategic objective that's going to get you there. So you could have a variety of different objectives based on a particular business goal. So what I'd like you to think about is think about your operation. This is a good time to get your hands on your worksheet. And item A, where it says ensure your business objectives are strategic and aligned with delivering value. What I'd like you to do is using this framework, come up with at least one. I'm asking for two here, but come up with at least one strategic objective based on these four categories that will help you achieve your goals in the next coming 12 months. I'll give you about 30, 45 seconds to jot one or two things down. Go ahead. Another 10 seconds or so. Okay, why don't you just wrap it up there, put that worksheet aside, or continue jotting down a few things while I chat here just for a second. It's very important to have a clear understanding of objectives. And it's not just for you as the leader. It's also for people within your organization and the adjacent groups. If you have peers within your organization that have adjacent departments, or perhaps you live in a matrix or you work in a matrix structure, it's very important that not just you and your team understand your strategic objectives, but also those people who support you, your peers, and it's a good idea to share it with your boss, your manager, so that he or she understands what you're trying to accomplish as well. It keeps people focused on the right things, and especially for your employees, it helps them make better decisions. And in terms of applying their discretionary effort, gives them, gives them the tools they need to succeed. I imagine most people on the phone have heard of or worked with a SWOT analysis. It's a very straightforward approach at assessing your business landscape, because your business landscape is made up of really two things: your external environment, your marketplace, where you do your business, where you compete, but everything, the results that you achieve within that external environment, your marketplace, is a direct function of the internal, how your organization works. Now, there's a lot of ways to break down how your organization functions, and when we take companies through strategic planning initiatives, this is only one piece. But for the purposes of a 60-minute webinar, I feel as though this is probably a good place to start. So let's look at some examples here, and I'll talk about each one of these. If you think about external is everything that surrounds you. You certainly have opportunities presented to you, whether it's a new market, it may be untapped potential within your existing customer base, it could be some sort of competency that your company possesses, capability that is under leveraged. That could be an opportunity. And you'll see I've given you some examples here. These are a little generic, but I don't want to be too specific because everybody on the line here has a different industry. But what's really important to understand about the external, it's things that you don't have direct control over. But if you think about opportunities, these are things that you can implement internally to take full advantage of. And a few things I've listed here are strategic alliances. They might be different channels to market. There's a lot of different ways to achieve market penetration or growing your market share. It could be something as simple as understanding your markets more effectively. Perhaps you're not capitalizing on the markets that you're pursuing. Now threats, same category. External, again, you don't have as much control. But if you think about some of the things that could be there, these are, I mean, external threats fall in the category of things like your competitors, it could be regulation. It could be something to do with your industry as a whole. It's changing. If we look at the technology space today, companies that cater to the to people who buy technology, that's constantly changing. There's consistent and persistent threats, always threatening them. More traditional businesses, threats aren't as great, but there still are threats out there. So if you think about, I've got some examples here. Offshore startup competitors could be something as, hey, they're more agile than us. How do we compete with smaller, more agile companies? Or the reverse could be large corporate cultures, large corporate covers, deeper pockets, greater stability, stronger partnerships, stronger financial backing. So there's a number of things you can think about, but you have really to think about outside your organization. How do you deal with that? Now, the internal aspect, the internal piece has everything to do with what's happening within your organization, what you have full control over. So what you can control, the internal, is your response to, or perhaps you're being proactive, is your response to what's going to be happening or what's happening in the external space. So we look at internal, market coverage might have something to do with the way your sales organization is covered, or your marketing group sees the world. Customer intimacy might be have everything to do with how you view the world. Are we a customer-centric organization? Does every employee in the company view our customers as the most important aspect of our business? Broad supply base, that has everything to do with perhaps your suppliers. Do our vendors understand us? Do we have strong partnerships? Do we have the capability to scale up or scale down if we need to? So those are the sorts of things. Weaknesses could be, the very first thing says all things to all people, meaning that might be the mindset. That might be your company's vision overall, or it may have something to do with we haven't figured out truly how to compete because we're trying to be all to everybody instead of being focused. Another weakness could be not leveraging technology. Many organizations every organization has technology, from the very basic phones, emails, texting, to more sophisticated ERP systems. We've got to stay ahead of the curve on that. Technology in itself is not a massive differentiator, but it can give you an edge. If you're not up on technology, it can certainly hold you back. So those are just a couple of things to think about. What I don't want to do here is have you go through a full SWOT analysis. That can take a very long time. But I think what we could do here in terms of helping you close some gaps, if you take your worksheet, and we're going to go to item B here. So I'm asking you to assess your business landscape, looking at internal and external factors. But I think what we'll do here is we're going to focus on the weaknesses and threat sides just for a minute, because I want to be able to close some gaps. So if you were to consider one business weakness and one business threat, based on the definitions I've just provided, I'm going to give you another 30 or 40 seconds to jot that down, and this will give you some ideas you can walk away with. You can take back to your organization after this and think about how can you close that gap. So go ahead, give that a try. All right, another 5 seconds or so. I wish I could give you more time, but you can certainly do this on your own. Trying to stick to 60 minutes and get it all done. We've got to be very disciplined here. Something else to consider here, there's a lot of ways to use a SWOT analysis, but if you're if you want to take a run at it, what I encourage you to do is work with people in your organization, or people who support your organization, to provide the input. And when it comes down to weaknesses, the strengths are easy. Sometimes the weaknesses, we don't want to hear about them. A great exercise to go. This is a great exercise to go through, but you do have to be honest with yourself and getting as much input as you can. And certainly the threats and opportunities, the more external input you can get, I think the more real and more comprehensive it will be. All right, let's continue to move along here, and let's talk about analyzing your business process. Now you'll see up on the screen here what I provided is something very simple. I want to demonstrate a process mapping exercise, and I've picked something very, very simple: making breakfast. I think we've all done it, and you might think, well, how does making breakfast apply to my business? Well, making breakfast doesn't, but the process of breaking down your business process is identical. So let's just have a quick look at it here. You have inputs. You'll see at the top of the screen there are inputs, top left, pardon me. And the inputs, in this case, making breakfast, is eggs, milk, bread, so on and so forth, anything that you're going to need to make your breakfast. The outputs will hopefully be a nicely cooked, delicious, hot breakfast: scrambled eggs, toast, crisp bacon, so on and so forth. Actually, I'm getting hungry thinking about this. I didn't have lunch. So if you take that, so how do we break that down? Well, let's break down making breakfast into preparing ingredients, cooking ingredients, serving ingredients. Fairly simple. But then we can break down cooking ingredients even further, and we can do that with cooking the eggs. It's not that difficult, and each one of these could be broken down further. Now, I'm illustrating it this way to make it quite simple, but what I found in many organizations is that the business process is not as well understood as they think it is. Now, companies that have embraced lean manufacturing, Six Sigma, anything to do with improving efficiency, have gone through this process, but many organizations don't. And even those that do, they tend to focus on the manufacturing part. This can be taken right into the office, and it can help you streamline and really make your process bulletproof. Now, you might say, well, why is this important? If you're a small organization, you might say, well, gee, hey, we don't really need something that detailed. If you want to grow as an organization, you have to think like a big company. Big companies map out their process so that they can do a number of things: be efficient, they can plug people in, they can hire people, they can come up to speed very quickly, they don't waste time, and they get the most out of the business day. The other side benefit is understanding it is employees, the people who are actually doing the work, see the flow. They understand it, and they feel that there's a rationale to the business. It causes less stress. It keeps people more fully engaged. Engagement leads to retention. There's a nice benefit to all of this. But let's look at this just a little more simply, and I'll give you the opportunity to think about your business. But let's look at it this way. If you look at the red box in the middle, where I've written your business process, imagine you've mapped out your process. Those green boxes are simply those are your steps, and there are different. And when you look at analyzing your business process to understand, well, where are the gaps? How do I know what's working and what's not working? There are always variances to a process. Meaning, variances are things that they're errors, they're an aberration in the process. It's something that doesn't work. Essentially, a variance is something that is not working, and there are three different types of variances. So if you look at the red box, that is your process. The first type of variance is called an inherent variance, meaning it's part of the process, something you have more direct control on. In my cooking breakfast example, it's perhaps you had the heat too high on the frying pan and you burned the eggs. So that, as a variance, is something that you could look at. If the end product, the output is burned eggs, you have to backtrack in your process to see what's going on. If in your business you might be late on your shipments, you might be slow in your delivery, there's going to be some sort of indicator of success that tells you, is the process working or not? What's very important to understand is to map your process, very similar to what we have here, and it might look more like the cooking breakfast example in the previous slide. But what's very important to understand each step in the process, what tasks or what major tasks are involved, and where do the variances exist. The next type of variance is a transported variance, and those are passed on to you from your suppliers, okay? So in my previous example, let's just say we went to the store because the input was bacon, eggs, so on and so forth. Let's say I went to the store and I bought bread, and I realized when I was cooking it, the bread was stale. That would be considered a transported variance. So if you think about everything that happens within your business, regardless of what it is, it might be someone from the outside. It could be an internal customer, somebody inside your organization, perhaps a handoff from the sales organization to the manufacturing group or the operations group. Let's just say sales doesn't do a good job of translating the order or plugging the order into the system, and then operations builds the wrong product as a result, or delivers the wrong service, or isn't timely. That is called a transported variance. Very, very important to understand, is it something we control directly, or is it external? The last one is a boundary variance, and that occurs somewhere in the handoff and coordination between departments or between you and your vendors, or you and your vendors. It has everything to do with the handoff. And my sales example, that would have actually been, I misstated that. That one actually would be a boundary variance. But in my making breakfast category or example, let's just say the breakfast is cooked, it's beautiful, the plate is handed to Uncle Fred because he's over that day visiting, and he drops it. He fumbles it. That would be a mess on the floor, and I would consider that a boundary variance. Going back to the previous example, let's just say you had raw materials that came into the organization and for a manufacturing process, and the raw material did not meet the quality specifications. That in itself would be transported. So I think you get the idea here. What's very important about the process is that you've got to understand how your organization works. What you'll find in just about every organization I visited, and yours is probably similar, that if the process isn't clear, if there's many variances in your business process, it doesn't change the fact that you have to deliver value to the customer, whether it's through your product, service, or the combination thereof. Your employees will overcome any challenges related to process. They'll work harder, they'll work longer, they'll work hard at solving problems. An organization can endure that for some time, but I think you'll all recognize that you can't ignore that. You've got to continually be improving your process for two reasons. One, if your employees are consistently having to deal with challenges related to your business process, over time, they're going to have to work longer hours, they're going to get frustrated, and it's going to feel like nothing is changing. That leads to active disengagement. And if you're familiar with the Gallup study around disengagement, you'll know that's a big deal. So in as far as helping your customers, helping your employees, keeping them engaged, and making sure the frustration is at or let's not say frustration, the stress is at the lowest possible levels, it is really incumbent upon you as the leader in the company to help understand what it is you need to do to improve your process. Now, you don't have to improve it on your own. It's best to get those who are involved in the process of understanding it and improving it. Then there's immediate buy-in. So let's take your worksheet. Let's go over to item C. So I'm asking you to analyze your business process. Now, I know you don't have time to look at your entire business process in this short exercise. You could certainly take this example, work with your team, or you could even do it on your own, but I encourage you to work with your team to go through a more detailed process. But what I'd like you to do is like you to think about what is working well and what's not working well. And I'd like you to list two business process issues that exist today. And if I can encourage you, it's up to you how you do it, but if I can encourage you to think about it through the eyes of your employees, what will help them? All right, so I'll give you another 30, 45 seconds. Go. Another 5 seconds or so. All right. Hopefully you have a couple issues listed. What I hope people will do is take this back, this information. This is information for yourself. Take it back to the organization and see what you can do to make improvements. Small wins are a big deal. Any incremental gains in effectiveness are a big boost to morale and keeping people motivated and engaged in your business. So think about that as you consider that, and hopefully you can take the time to pull your team together. Now I want to review this. This was from webinar number 2 because the reason why I want to talk about this has everything to do with one of my earlier statements. You can't accomplish really anything without the employees. It all comes down to the people who surround you, support you. And I do tell leaders that think of it, or I encourage leaders to think of it in terms of you support your employees, you work for them. If you can create an environment, a working environment that allows them to thrive and grow and to reach their full potential as quickly as possible, then they grow as individuals, they perform better, they make better decisions, and ultimately they make you look good and make the organization look good. But I want to bring this up. This is kind of the rule of thumb because the next slide I'm going to bring up relates to this. How do you know where people are? Evaluating your talent or understanding if someone is not performing at the levels you want them to usually comes down to one of these 4 things. Have you, as the leader and the company, set the right expectation in terms of results, timeliness, outcomes? Have you connected them to what the value is of the business so that they know how their value contributes and how they need to achieve, how they need to be successful? That's most important. And most disconnects between a manager and an employee starts with expectation, almost 99% of the time. Managers, and I'll say managers, they are leaders, always think they've done a great job of setting expectation, and most of the time they've left something out, not purposely, but accidentally, because they just didn't see the big picture or the full picture. Secondly, skills. Does the employee have the skills? And that's not just hard skills. You might have a brilliant person, massively intelligent, but they're missing some of the people skills or the team development skills or the influencing skills. Does the individual have the skills to perform well in their role? The structure piece has everything to do with your structure in the organization. How do things work? That relates to process, it relates to systems, it relates to decision making. Is the structure working in a fashion that will allow people to succeed and grow and do the best that they can? And then the final one is attitude, the one that you probably will have the most challenge with. This is not your attitude, it's the attitude of the employee. Do they have the right attitude for their role? That might be a root cause issue related to why they're not performing. Attitude is a function of people's beliefs. What they believe about themselves, about the business, about the organization, and the people around them will impact their attitude. The only way a leader can go after changing attitude is by changing someone's beliefs. And that has a lot to do with accountability, performance management, making sure people are connected to the organization's values. I always provide this rule of thumb. It's handy Write it down on the back of your hand, carry it with you. If you ever run into a challenge with a person or even a team, these 4 areas should be explored to understand how and why someone is not performing at the level they need to. You will notice expectation, skill, structure has more to do with you than it does them. So before you ever consider asking somebody to move on, leave an organization, make sure you've done the right thing first. Before you even consider evaluating them, make sure you've done the right thing first. This is about creating a great environment. So let's go to the next slide here, because this will tell you a little bit about how we look at organizational and team development. Let me explain. There's a lot going on here. I'll try to break it down simply. This is what we call our KS to high performance model. And if you look at the bottom of my Venturi there, you'll notice in the bottom half, below the stability stage, there's a lot of arrows going in many different directions. That would be akin to chaos. You could read the descriptors under each one of these: chaos, then stability, then high performance. You can't jump stages. If someone has reached high performance, they likely have gone through chaos and stability at some point in their career or in their new role. But chaos is essentially, it's not consistent. Processes aren't clear. The understanding of where people are going is not clear, and results aren't really there. And that's why we say inconsistent results. The stability stage, which is the middle, very important, things are starting to come together. There's clarity and understanding of direction, what needs to be achieved, and there's some level of consistency of achievement. And then high performance is really is an individual reaching their potential in a new. It could be in an existing role. What you try to do is make sure your employees are achieving or at that high performing level. Now, if you change the role, challenge them differently, they could slide backwards because it's new territory. And that's getting people out of their comfort zone. Very good idea. But you'll notice below, I said you can't go from chaos to high performance. You've got to go through the stability stage. If an individual, and this can apply to a team, is in the chaos stage, things aren't consistent, the only way to get them there is through stability, meaning it's a performance management discussion. This is what I see happening. These are the consequences of it happening. What are the gaps? How do we change it? What's your commitment? This is not necessary. Would be the closest thing to holding somebody accountable. I don't advocate a massive amount of holding people accountable. I'm more about building a culture of accountability where people hold themselves accountable. You don't have to. So that as you look at the top half of my Venturi, where those lines are going straight up vertically, I know that's redundant, up and vertical, same thing. The stability to high performance stage is all about coaching, it's delegating, it's challenging. But there's no way people can do that until they've reached that level of stability so that they have a foundation to perform at their best. So let me show you something, and this is what I'll ask many leaders to do, especially those who have people reporting to them, is where does your team exist? So I've popped a little star on there, and I'd say, well, I'm a manager, I have 10 people reporting to me, and I think if based on those definitions, that's where my team is. So that would imply more people are above the line, the stability line, than below. The next question would be, okay, put your people, put your employees on that chart, and where are they? And you'll see in this particular example, this is a fictitious example, but quite representative of what you might see. There's a couple employees that are really up in that high performing stage, a couple above the stability line, and a couple below, and one at the very bottom. The challenge with this particular, the way this lines up, managers, leaders tend to spend more time and a disproportionate amount of time with the people below that stability line, which means you're not paying attention to the people who really need it, the people just above the line or the ones at the high performing stage. You've got to get people above the line. I've had people show me their model, and many people are below the line, and they wonder why they're so busy. They're not confident with their people. They're not delegating. People aren't able to step up. As coaches, as leaders and coaches, you have to think about if I'm going to coach people, I have to get them to a place where they have the mindset, they have the ability, they understand themselves, and I understand their full potential. So it's absolutely imperative that you get people above the line, and then you can coach them to high performance. If you had every one of your employees performing at their potential, your life as a leader is much easier. So let's take this as an opportunity. On the worksheet, item D, I would like you to evaluate your talent. Actually, evaluate your team. Start with your team. Where's your team on this? And then, and you don't have to put smiley faces for the employees. You could put X's or initials if that made sense to you. Then plot your employees on that. Now, I had to put my chart on the worksheet horizontally just for space purposes, but you get the, I think you get the point. So go ahead, jot down where your team is, and then jot down where your employees are. I'll give you 30, 40 seconds. Snap another 5 or 10 seconds. All right, good. So, you know, you've got a quick snapshot of where your team is, where your employees are. There's no good or bad here. It is what it is. Very important to understand that. But the question then is, what are you going to do about it? Are you spending enough time working with your top performers? Are you spending too much time with your consistently non-performers or underperformers is probably a better way to put it. So think about that. I don't advocate getting rid of people in the organization, but if you do what you need to do as a leader, if you set the stage, if you create an environment for people to grow and thrive and people can't get there, over a period of time, it may be an obvious decision that either they have to be, they should move somewhere else, or they're in the wrong organization. It's very rare, but it does happen. All right, now let's talk about gaps and solutions. I said in the beginning, hey, we're going to come up with gaps and solutions. Well, let's just understand what that means. If you think about what you want to achieve, you achieve and deliver value through your business. And your business is made up of a number of things. It has people, it has strategy, it has culture, systems, all the things that it needs to perform. If your business is achieving the results or not achieving the results, it's a direct result of something that's going on in your business. You know, they talk about the definition of insanity. If you want the same results, keep doing it the same way. Well, let's think about what gaps you want to close here, and I'm going to frame it a little bit. So gap analysis, it's a comparison of actual performance with potential performance, all right? Actual performance, you have to know, you have to have, first of all, you have to have some measures of success. If you don't have a dashboard for your organization, meaning these are the, I like to keep a dashboard down to 5 items if possible, but these are the 5 things we measure to know if we're doing well. Many organizations will measure cost, some might measure revenue, some might measure efficiencies, you name it. But you want to have a handful of measures that provide you the health of your business. If you are not achieving, if you are not reaching the goals that you want to, the measures tell you, no, we're not doing what we should be doing. And you should have something for yourself, for your team members, and for your management. You want to look at understanding what the root cause is. Don't guess. Don't make an automatic snap judgment on that's the problem. It's that person. It's that process. It's that computer program. You want to take a little bit of time to understand truly, is that the root cause? Do not chase symptoms. You will be throwing good time or good money after bad in the process of closing the gap. The root cause is very, very important. From the root cause itself, then it's all about developing a solution. But a solution will come with something that is well thought through and considering many different aspects. So let me just give you an example. Let's just say you had a business problem. You had poor team performance. So the measure on team performance might be time to respond to customers. Perhaps it's you want it to be 24 hours and you're 48. Okay, you have something clear and measurable. The team understands that. The symptom might be serious signs of employee stress. And some organizations have said, we need stress management training. Well, not so fast. It might not be stress management training. It might be something else. It could be a function of management. Perhaps management is not planning well. They're not planning in advance. They're not establishing priorities. They're not giving employees enough information. So let's not jump to judgment without looking at it carefully. And I've seen that many times, that our employees are stressed out. Let's have stress management training. Well, you're just putting a Band-Aid on something. You've got to get to the root of the issue. Is the stress caused by the employee themselves, or is the stress caused by maybe bad process or inconsistent process? Or like I said earlier, or planning. Let's make sure we're looking at the real issues so that you have the best opportunity to improve your situation. So I'll give you just about 30 seconds or so, and I'm saying list your top two. This is item E on the worksheet, gaps and solutions. List your top 2 performance gaps and associated performance measures. So I'll give you 30 seconds, and I have a comment on this. Another 5 seconds. Great. Now you should have something on your paper under item E. If you don't, that could be an indicator. Meaning, if you don't know where your gaps are as quickly as I just asked you to put them on paper, that may mean you don't have a clear understanding of what your performance is. Performance measurement needs to be something measurable, tangible. Something that I could ask you if you were in front of me and I asked you, and I would say, what's the evidence? What tells you that specifically? What are you measuring? It shouldn't be something soft and squishy or ambiguous. It should be something very crisp and clear that anybody at any time, just like I've done today, could say, how are you doing with your business? And you should be able to rattle off, good here, not good there, good here. Or you even might say, well, let me grab my dashboard. I'll tell you exactly. It should be that easy. And if it's not, I would encourage you to think about, okay, what should we measure? And the best way to do it, if you have a team of people reporting to you, is get them involved in defining what those key measures are, because then they own them. You don't. You want your people, your team, the people around you to support you and own those things that are most important. All right, so let me hit the summary, and then we'll spend a few minutes, just a few minutes on some questions. The summary goes like this, okay? What I always encourage people to do is compare actual performance with desired performance, which means you need something tangible to measure. I know I'm beating the drum pretty hard on that one, but I don't see enough of that with many of the organizations I work with. After I've worked with them, they see the light, and they get a lot of people involved in understanding what is it we need to measure, but you have to have something very tangible. I want you to consider all business aspects when identifying gaps. The exercise earlier had four quadrants, 4 areas. Well, very similarly, I want you to think about product and service delivery. How do you deliver your product and service? That has everything to do with efficiencies, has to do with process, structure. Think about employee performance. You can't run your business without people. As much as it would be wonderful to say, well, you know, they're just pawns in all this, they're not. People, employees have needs, wants, desires, and they want to be part of your company's success and part of delivering value. That means different things to different people, but you have to think about their performance and what it means to them as an individual. You have to have business process efficiency. You don't have that, and it's very difficult to scale. And by the way, if you don't, your competitors certainly will. And of course, you have to have revenue and profit. As much as companies don't exist I'll ask this question, why does your company exist? And I'll hear, to make money. No, that is the result of what your business does, and you need it. But it's not the reason why you exist, but you do need money. You have to pay the bills. You've got to pay your employees. And you have to consistently be growing your business. Just to keep up with inflation, there's got to be growth. So you don't want anything flat. And profit is important, but it's not everything. Earning a fair profit is really where you want to go. And then going to addressing gaps. Solutions, it's imperative that you address root cause issues, not symptoms. I talked about that a few moments ago. And then going back to solutions or key initiatives or anything that's strategic to helping the company grow, they need to be strategic, meaning they got to be aligned with the value that your company provides and the value stream of your company, which is driven by every department in your organization. There has to be some measurable aspect to it. And then you have to think about it. At the end of the day, it has to be designed with delivering value. And that typically, in most cases, actually in every case, it's about delivering value to the customer. And remember, value is not in your eyes. It's the perception of what your customer feels and sees. That's the value, okay? So keep those four things in mind. And before we jump into a couple questions here, I want everyone on the line here to think about, you've got 5 areas on that worksheet. I'll encourage you to take at least one idea, if not more, but one idea back with you to implement, not as an extra chore or item or something you have to do, but a different way of thinking about your business and operating your business. All right, Alan, do we have any questions that you might want to throw my way?
Yeah, we've got a few. Matt asks, on the stages of organizational development slide, you had us rank our employees from chaos to high performance. What if you can't get an employee above the stability line?
Well, I talked a little bit about that, and I'm going to answer it this way. If you're working well as a leader, meaning you're looking at your model the right way, you're building an environment where people can really achieve the most that they can, you're setting expectations, you're keeping open lines of communication, all the important things that leaders do, and you're coaching them, the team as a whole is going to rise. And those that can't get above that line, and I said that, I think I said earlier, it's rare. Those that can't rise above that line, it's usually because they don't want to, or there's something about them that they can't. At that point, and I mean after you've exhausted all possibilities, then it's very important for you to have a conversation with that employee. And it might be a conversation that says, I don't think this is a good fit for you. But only after you feel you have done everything possible. In all the years I've done this, 15 years that I've been doing this, that rarely happens. What happens more often in situations like that is individuals self-select out. They realize it's not for them, and they might leave on their own. But I would say probably 70 to 80% of the time, most people rise to the occasion based on strong leadership. What else do you have?
We got one from Amanda. Says, regarding the slide on business perspectives, please explain the relationship between the 4 areas.
Well, if anyone's familiar with the balanced scorecard, that's the model we use for all sorts of things, primarily strategic planning. But this fits into that same category, and I call them business perspectives because you want to look at your business broken down into those 4 areas. They're all interrelated. Customer satisfaction. The business process is all about your operations. The financial is the health of your business, and the learning and growth has everything to do with culture. Those all interrelate. For instance, if you might say, hey, I want to have the best possible customer service. Well, great. If you have lousy business process, the employees who tend to be very proud about what they do will work very, very hard to deliver that value to the customer so that the financial piece is there. If that persists, though, that could create a culture where people are stressed, they become less engaged, and engagement, or lack thereof, disengagement, leads to poor customer retention, meaning they might start delivering poor product or poor service, which will impact the customer, which will impact the financials. They're all interrelated. One impacts the other. If financials aren't well, you're going to hire fewer people, which spirals. I mean, they're all interrelated. So if you ignore any one of them, that's a problem. And that's where the term balanced scorecard comes in, because you have to find balance amongst all four to run a successful organization.
Okay.
Anything else?
Well, we have one last question. This one comes in from Sharon. She asks, after completing a SWOT analysis, what are the methods you should use to get the most from the data?
Yeah, good question, because there's an awful lot of data that will come out of a comprehensive SWOT analysis. Essentially, one of the first things you want to do is, once you have your opportunities and strengths, what you're trying to do is match company strengths, what you're truly good at, and match them with external opportunities. That's the best way to drive the company forward relative to a SWOT analysis, because what you're saying is, this is what we know we're good at. This is what we can capitalize on. And the external environment will allow us to do that. So it's matching. We call it matching opportunities and strengths. The other way to do it is to look at threats, the threats and weaknesses, and to try to turn threats and weaknesses, or actually try to minimize the weaknesses, or turn threats and weaknesses into a strength. There are opportunities in certain situations where an external threat could serve as an opportunity, but the organization has to figure out how to leverage that. That one's a little trickier, and we need some real context to go with it. If anyone on the line wants some more detail on that, because we are running out of time here a little bit, I'll be able to explain that in more detail. I've actually got a paper that I can share on that will provide more detail.
Okay. Great. I think that's all we've got for today.
All right, great. And I think we'll wrap up. The next session is, I'm going to go to the very beginning because I had it in the beginning there. Excuse me for doing this. The next one is in December 11th. Hope to have everyone on the line. If there are any questions, please feel free to contact me directly. And of course, you always have the opportunity to share this with others. You can go to our website, download from the website. We'll have this up and online, recorded in just a couple days.